Be Me, 24. My name is Leah, and I've always considered myself to be a pretty self-aware person. I have a good job, my own circle of friends, and a clear idea of what I want in a partner. I'm not one of those girls who expects a fairy tale or needs a man to complete them. Equality, partnership, and mutual respect are the foundations of a healthy relationship, in my opinion. For the last 4 years, I thought I had found exactly that with my boyfriend, Cody. When we first met, he was just so different. He wasn't loud or arrogant like a lot of guys. He was quiet, observant, and incredibly thoughtful. Our first few dates, he seemed more interested in learning about my goals and my day than talking about himself. It was refreshing. He had this gentle energy that made me feel safe and seen. As we got more serious, this thoughtfulness became a central part of our relationship. It wasn't about grand, expensive gestures. It was the accumulation of small, consistent acts of kindness. He'd show up at my work with my favorite coffee on a stressful afternoon just because he was in the neighborhood. If I casually mentioned a book I wanted to read, it would appear on my nightstand a week later. He'd say he saw it in a bookstore and thought of me. He remembered everything: the name of my childhood pet, my weird aversion to a certain type of fabric, the story behind a stupid little scar on my knee. It felt like he was building a library of me in his mind, and it made me feel incredibly special. My friends would always comment on it. They'd say things like, "Cody is the gold standard," or, "I wish my boyfriend paid attention like that." I'd just smile and say that I found a good one. It was our normal. I was proud of our dynamic. He was always putting my needs and even my wants before his own. I remember one time we were planning a weekend trip. I had my heart set on this little coastal town a few hours away. He had been talking for weeks about wanting to go to the mountains for a hiking trip. When it came time to book, he just pulled up the website for the beach hotel. I asked him about his hiking idea, feeling a little guilty. He just smiled and said, "We can do that anytime. I know how much you've been wanting to hear the ocean." He genuinely seemed happier making me happy than fulfilling his own desires. This selflessness extended to everything. His wardrobe was simple, functional. He drove a reliable but unimpressive car that he'd had for years. He never spent money on frivolous things for himself. Meanwhile, he'd surprise me with concert tickets for a band I liked or a new piece of equipment for my hobby. I'd sometimes tell him he needed to treat himself more often. He'd always brush it off, saying he had everything he needed. I interpreted this as a sign of his maturity and his focus on our future together. He wasn't wasting money on temporary thrills. He was building something real with me. Which brings me to his phone. For at least the last year, maybe longer, he'd been carrying around this absolute relic. The screen was a mosaic of cracks, held together by a weary screen protector. The battery life was a joke. He had to carry a portable charger everywhere. The thing was so slow that sometimes it would take him a full minute just to open a map application. It was honestly a bit embarrassing. I used to poke fun at him for it, always in a loving way. We'd be out with friends, and he'd try to pull up a photo, and the phone would freeze. I'd laugh and say, "Cody, you're an adult with a professional job. You can afford a phone that was made in this decade." Our friends would chuckle, and he'd just shake his head with a little smile. His response was always the same: "It still makes calls. It does what I need it to do." I just saw it as another one of his quirks, another example of his humble, unmaterialistic nature. He was a man of substance, not flashy gadgets. That's what I told myself. Looking back, I think I was so used to him being the giver, the provider of nice things, that I never really considered what it meant that he never gave anything nice to himself. It was just a fact of our life together. Cody takes care of me. He prioritizes me, and I, in return, appreciate him and create a loving, stable partnership for us. It felt balanced. It felt right. A few months ago, my laptop started acting up right in the middle of a huge freelance project I was doing. The deadline was looming, and I was completely panicking, on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. Cody dropped everything. He spent 2 entire evenings researching the problem, carefully taking the machine apart, and fixing whatever was wrong with it. He stayed up until 3 a.m. one night just to make sure it was perfect. I got my project done on time, and it was all thanks to him. I baked him his favorite cookies and told him he was my hero. He just said he was happy he could take that stress off my shoulders. That was Cody, my rock, always there to solve my problems. Then, about a month ago, a new situation arose with his phone. We were trying to navigate to a new restaurant we wanted to try for date night. His phone's GPS was completely useless, lagging and putting us on the wrong streets. After driving in circles for 20 minutes, we were both frustrated, and the mood was kind of ruined. We ended up just going to one of our old spots. In the car on the way home, I was more direct than usual. I told him, "Seriously, this is becoming a problem. You need a new phone. It's not just about you anymore. It's affecting us." He was quiet for a moment, and then just nodded. "You're right. I'll look into it." I felt a sense of relief. Finally, he was going to get rid of that piece of junk. In the back of my mind, I was already getting a little excited. I wondered what he would get. Maybe he'd get us matching ones. That would be a cute, coupley thing to do, a symbol of our connection. The weeks passed, and he didn't mention it again. I figured he was busy with work or was waiting for a sale. Cody was always practical like that. I didn't push it. I trusted him to handle it. Life continued as normal. He helped me assemble some new furniture I bought. He planned a surprise picnic for us one sunny Saturday. He was the same attentive, wonderful Cody he'd always been. The phone issue faded into the background. Then came last Tuesday. Nothing about the day felt special or different. I had a long day at work, and we decided to just meet at a casual Italian place near our apartment for dinner. We were making small talk about our days, talking about office politics and a funny email I'd received. It was comfortable, routine. We ordered our food, and as we were waiting, he looked up from the menu with a calm expression. "Oh, by the way," he started, "I took care of that phone situation today." My face lit up immediately. "You did? Finally?" I said, probably a little too enthusiastically. "That's great news. What did you end up getting?" I was leaning forward, genuinely excited for him and for us. No more getting lost on the way to dinner. No more waiting an eternity for a web page to load. He reached into his work bag that was sitting on the chair next to him. I expected him to pull out a phone, maybe 2. Instead, he placed a crisp, sealed white box on the table between us. It was the latest model from a very popular brand, sleek and expensive looking. "Wow, you really went for it," I said, impressed. He gave a small nod, looking at the box with a quiet sense of satisfaction. And then he said the words that made the entire room feel like it had dropped 20 degrees. "Yeah, I figured it was time. I got this for myself. The old one just couldn't keep up anymore." He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly. For myself. I just stared at the box. My smile felt like it had frozen on my face. The cheerful ambiance of the restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the low murmur of conversations, it all seemed to fade into a dull hum. My brain was trying to process the information, trying to find the context I was surely missing. He bought a new phone, a really nice one, and the thought of getting one for me, or at least discussing it with me, had apparently not even crossed his mind. I had to be sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My voice came out a little quieter than I intended. "For yourself?" I repeated, the question hanging in the air. He looked up from the box, his attention finally shifting back to me. "Uh-huh," he confirmed, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He then picked up his fork and started eating the bread from the basket on the table. He just moved on. A strange and unfamiliar feeling began to churn in my stomach. It was a hot, prickly sensation that I couldn't immediately identify. It felt like a mix of shock and offense. I felt overlooked, ignored. It was as if he had made a decision about us without me, except it wasn't even about us. It was just about him. For 4 years, every major decision, every significant purchase had been a conversation. Every thoughtful act had been directed at me or our shared life. This was the first time he had done something so unilateral, so self-serving. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. This is stupid, a small part of me thought. It's just a phone. You're an independent woman. You can buy your own phone. But another, louder voice was drowning that one out. This isn't about the object. It's about the message. The message was that he went and did something for himself, and only himself. After years of me being the focus of his attention and care, it felt like a sudden and jarring demotion. I was no longer the first person on his mind. I tried to compose myself, to approach it from a logical angle. I took a sip of water, my hand trembling slightly. "Oh," I said, trying to sound casual. "So, you didn't happen to see if they had any deals? Like a 2-for-1 or something?" It was a gentle probe, a way to give him an opportunity to explain himself. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He genuinely didn't understand where I was coming from. "No," he said slowly. "Why? Your phone works perfectly fine, doesn't it?" That was it. That was the line that broke through my composure. "It's not about whether my phone works, Cody," I said, my voice now laced with an edge I couldn't hide. "It's about the principle. It's about consideration." "Consideration?" He repeated the word as if he'd never heard it before. "Yes, the consideration to think of your partner when you're making a purchase like that. The thought that, hey, maybe this is something we could do together. Maybe she would like one too." He put his fork down and leaned back in his chair, a slight frown on his face. He was looking at me like I was a stranger. "Leah, it's not a romantic getaway. It's a piece of electronics, a tool. My old tool was broken, so I bought a new one. I don't understand why this is an issue." He called it a tool. He reduced this entire situation, this entire lapse in his affection and attention, to the purchase of a hammer or a wrench. He was invalidating my feelings completely by refusing to see the emotional significance. "Because it's never been just a tool before," I shot back, my voice rising slightly. "Everything you've ever done has been about us. You see flowers, you think of me. You see a book, you think of me. You go to a tech store and spend hundreds of dollars, and suddenly I don't even enter the equation." The argument felt so clear, so righteous in my head. I was defending the very foundation of our relationship, the thoughtfulness that he himself had built. He just shook his head, looking exasperated. "That's not fair. This is different. This was a need. It wasn't a whim. It's not the same as a gift." The waiter arrived with our food, placing the plates down in the middle of a thick, tense silence. Cody immediately picked up his pasta and started eating. He didn't say another word. He just ate. He was shutting down the conversation. He was telling me, without words, that my feelings on this matter were not important enough to discuss further, that my hurt was an inconvenience to his dinner. I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. I just pushed the food around on my plate, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. Every scenario I imagined ended with the same conclusion. He had changed. The man sitting across from me, coldly eating his meal while I was clearly upset, was not the same man who once drove an hour in the rain to bring me soup when I was sick. Something fundamental had shifted. The constant warm glow of his attention that I had basked in for 4 years had been switched off, and I was left feeling cold and alone in the dark. And the worst part was, he didn't even seem to notice. Or if he did, he didn't care. The rest of the dinner was agonizingly silent. I felt a chasm opening up between us, right there across the checkered tablecloth. And it all started with a simple, selfish purchase. The walk home from the restaurant was just as silent as the dinner had been. I kept waiting for him to reach for my hand, to apologize, to say anything that would acknowledge the tension between us. He just walked with his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed straight ahead. It was a short walk, but it felt like miles. I felt like I was next to a roommate, not the love of my life. The warmth and connection we always had felt completely gone, replaced by a cold, formal distance. When we got back to our apartment, the silence became even heavier. He went through his nightly routine as if nothing was wrong. He changed his clothes, brushed his teeth, and got into bed. He didn't even try to talk to me. I stood in the middle of the living room, feeling completely lost. Was I supposed to just pretend this didn't happen? Was I supposed to just get over it? The disrespect felt so profound. It wasn't a simple disagreement. It felt like a betrayal of the dynamic we had spent years building. I finally went into the bedroom, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and sadness. He was lying on his side, his back to me, scrolling through his new phone. The bright, crisp light of the screen illuminated his face. He seemed completely engrossed. He was so absorbed in his new possession, this symbol of his newfound selfishness, that he didn't even look up when I came in. That was the final straw for me that night. I laid down on my side of the bed, as far away from him as I could get, and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. My mind was a hurricane of thoughts. I replayed every gift he'd ever given me, every thoughtful gesture. Had it all been a performance? An act to win my affection and trust? Was this the real Cody? The one who, once he felt secure, would stop putting in the effort? The one who saw our relationship as something he could check out of whenever he wanted to focus on himself? It felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. The man I thought I knew inside and out had suddenly become a stranger. I felt a deep sense of hurt. He had made me feel unimportant, and he seemed completely oblivious to the fact that he had done anything wrong. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted and emotionally raw. He was already in the kitchen making coffee, again, as if it were just another normal day. I decided I couldn't stay there. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I needed space to process what had happened, and more importantly, I needed him to see the consequences of his actions. I packed an overnight bag with a few essentials. I walked into the kitchen, my bag in hand. He looked up from the coffee pot, a neutral expression on his face. "I'm going to stay at my friend's place for a couple of days," I announced. My voice was steady, but it took all my effort to keep it from shaking. I need some space to think. This was his chance. This was the moment for him to drop everything, to look concerned, to ask me what was wrong, to beg me to stay and talk it through. This was the moment for the old Cody to reappear. Instead, he just slowly nodded. "Okay," he said calmly. "If you think that's what you need, take all the time you want." He didn't ask why. He didn't protest. He just accepted it. It felt like he was relieved, like my leaving was making things easier for him. My heart sank. He was letting me go without a fight. He was confirming my worst fears. He didn't care enough to try. I walked out of our apartment without another word. I fully expected him to call or text me within the hour. I imagined my phone buzzing with a long, apologetic message, telling me he understood now and that he had made a terrible mistake. I drove to my friend's house, my eyes blurry with tears. My friend, of course, was completely on my side. When I told her the story, her jaw dropped. "That is the biggest red flag I have ever heard," she said, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "It's not about the phone, Leah. It's about him showing you that you are no longer a priority. He's showing you his true colors." Hearing her validate my feelings was a small comfort. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. This was a real problem. The first day passed. The only communication from him was a single text message that evening. It read, "Hope you got there okay. Let me know if you need anything." That was it. It was so sterile, so detached. It sounded like something you'd send to a coworker who was out sick. There was no emotion, no remorse, no "I miss you" or "we need to talk." It was a logistical check-in, not an emotional plea. My friend said it was a classic passive-aggressive move designed to make me feel guilty and force me to be the one to initiate a real conversation. The second day was complete silence. Not a single call, not a single text. I spent the day checking my phone obsessively, my anxiety growing with each passing hour. How could he just go about his life, knowing I was so upset that I had to leave our home? Was he even thinking about me? Did our 4-year relationship mean so little that he could just switch it off? My friend tried to distract me. We watched movies, ordered takeout, but all I could think about was him at our apartment, probably enjoying the peace and quiet, playing with his new phone. By the third day, my sadness had hardened into a cold, firm anger. It was clear now. He wasn't going to fight for this. He wasn't confused. He was indifferent. He had made a conscious decision to prioritize himself, and my reaction to that decision was an inconvenience he was choosing to ignore. He was waiting for me to be the one to break the silence, to come back and accept his new terms for our relationship, the terms where he gets to be selfish, and I just have to accept it. I refuse to do that. I have my pride. I have my standards. I built my life around the idea of a partnership with him, a partnership that he defined with his constant attentiveness. He was the one who set that standard. Now, he's the one who has shattered it. He can't just change the rules of the game 4 years in and expect me to just go along with it. This isn't the behavior of a man who is in love. A man who is in love would be in agony knowing his partner is hurting. He would be calling, texting, showing up at my friend's door with flowers, begging for a chance to make things right. He would be trying to understand my perspective, not dismissing it as illogical. Cody is doing none of those things. He is doing nothing. And that, in itself, is everything. I realize now that this wasn't a sudden change. It was a slow fade that I was too blind to see. The broken phone wasn't a symbol of his humility. It was a symbol of his neglect for his own needs, which I mistook for devotion to mine. Now that he's finally decided to take care of himself, he doesn't seem to have any energy left to take care of me. He's shown me that his own comfort is now more important than my emotional security. I'm not going to be the one to text him. I'm not going to call. I'm not going to go back to that apartment until he acknowledges the profound hurt he has caused. He needs to understand that a relationship isn't just about the good times. It's about showing up even when it's hard. It's about considering your partner's feelings, even if you don't fully understand them. He failed that test completely. My friend keeps telling me that I deserve better. I deserve a man whose love is not conditional on his own convenience. A man who doesn't see affection and thoughtfulness as a chore he can stop doing once he's comfortable. A man who would never, ever buy a new phone for himself without at least thinking about the woman he's supposed to love. I'm starting to believe she's right. If he wants this relationship, he knows what he has to do. He has to prove that I am still his priority. And if he doesn't, then he's just proven that the last 4 years were built on a lie, and I'm better off knowing that now